All right, welcome back. So in our journey through the Pharm course on audit and regulatory compliance, we've already covered the fundamentals in Unit 1 and the big picture of quality systems in Unit 2. Today, we dive into Unit 3, and this is where we get to follow the entire life of a medicine, right from a barrel of raw chemicals to the final pill in a bottle. We're going to be looking at everything through the eyes of a pharmaceutical auditor to see how they protect what we're calling the unbroken chain of quality. Let's get into it.
You know, this quote really just says it all, doesn't it? Quality isn't something you can just inspect at the very end. It has to be built in from the absolute beginning. It's simple. If your ingredients are bad, the final product is going to be bad. It doesn't matter how fancy your factory is. So, the supply chain, that's the first and you could argue the most critical link of them all.
So here's our roadmap for Unit 3. We're going to tackle this in 4 key modules. We'll kick things off at the very source, auditing the vendors who supply all the raw materials. Then, we'll follow those materials as they arrive at the warehouse, which is kind of like the gatekeeper for the whole facility. From there, we're diving right into the heart of production, where that dosage form is forged. And we'll wrap it all up at the packaging line, the final frontier, before we do a quick recap of the auditor's absolutely vital role in protecting this entire chain.
Okay, our journey starts right here with Module 1, Auditing the Source. And let's be clear, this is not optional. Regulatory agencies, like the FDA, hold the drug company, the manufacturer, 100% responsible for their materials. You can't just point fingers and blame your supplier if something goes wrong. The buck stops with you, which is why a vendor audit is a non-negotiable part of the business.
This brings us to something I call the COA trap. So a vendor sends you a document, a certificate of analysis, or COA, and it's basically a piece of paper that says, hey, trust us, our material is good. A lot of companies just file it away. But a real audit goes so much deeper. The auditor's job is to ask, is this COA even trustworthy? Does your testing lab actually exist? Can you prove you even own the equipment you claim you used for the tests?
Now, the number one risk when you're making the actual drug substance, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, or API, is cross-contamination. I mean, imagine a factory making different chemicals in the same giant vats. If they're making something really potent, like a cancer drug or an antibiotic like penicillin, they need a completely separate, dedicated facility. We're talking different building, different air supply, the whole 9 yards. But in a multi-purpose plant, the auditor's main question is this: how do you prove that every last molecule of the last chemical is gone before you start the next one? They'd better have some seriously bulletproof cleaning procedures, backed by solid science.
And this is a perfect example of a huge failure point in packaging. It's called gang printing. Now, to save a few bucks, a printing company might put labels for your 50 milligram tablets right next to labels for someone else's 100 milligram tablets, all on one giant sheet. In the pharma world, this is a cardinal sin. Why? Because if that cutting machine is off by a single millimeter, you could end up with the wrong dose information on your product, and that can lead to a truly catastrophic patient mix-up and recall.
So, we've approved our vendors and now the materials are arriving at the plant. We are now entering the warehouse for Module 2, the next critical link in our chain. You can really think of this place as the gatekeeper of the facility. Nothing gets in and nothing gets out to the production floor without passing inspection right here.
Inside the warehouse, there's a really important philosophy at play. You've probably heard of FIFO, first in, first out. That's an accounting term. But in pharmaceuticals, the absolute rule is FIFO, first expired, first out. This is all about quality. It doesn't matter when a drum of material showed up. What matters is its expiration date. You always use the stock that's going to expire the soonest. It's a simple rule that prevents expired materials from ever getting into a batch of medicine.
Okay, time to put on your auditor hat for a second. You're in the dispensing area, where all the powders are carefully weighed out. You pick up a scoop that's supposed to be clean and ready to go, but you notice a tiny bit of white powder stuck in a little crevice on the handle. So, what's the call? Is this a minor issue? A major one?
It is a major, and potentially even a critical, finding. That tiny bit of residue isn't just dust. It could be a highly potent steroid from the previous batch. Now, if that scoop gets used to weigh ingredients for, say, a simple painkiller, that residue is going to contaminate the entire new batch. This is a direct threat to patient safety.
All right, we are now entering the heart of the factory for Module 3. All the raw materials have been verified, they've been weighed, and now they're heading into the production area to be transformed from simple powders into the actual tablet or capsule that a patient is going to take.
You know, a good auditor can tell a lot just by watching tablets coming off a high-speed machine. You see black spots on the tablets? That's likely oil from a poorly cleaned part. If the top of the tablet is literally popping off, that's called capping, and it means your tooling is probably damaged.
A blurry logo? That's called sticking, and it's from worn-out punches. And if you see a fine layer of powder coating the top of the machine itself, well, that means your dust containment system is failing. Every one of these little defects tells a story about the health of the machine. Every tablet has to pass through a metal detector before it goes any further. But how does an auditor know it's actually working? They do what's called a challenge test. They don't just look at a logbook, they physically challenge the machine. They have the operator pass these standardized metal test wands through it. And the key is in step 3. It's not enough for an alarm to just beep. The auditor has to see that rejection flap physically activate and kick that test piece out of a line. You have to prove it works.
So let's talk about yield for a second. A batch is finished, and the final count shows you got 99% of what you theoretically should have. That sounds pretty good, right? Almost perfect. But for an auditor, that 99% isn't the end of the story.
This is the question that absolutely has to be answered. If you started with 200 kilograms of material and you ended up with 198 kilograms of tablets, where did the other 2 kilograms go? An auditor needs to see the documentation that accounts for every last gram. Was it lost as dust in the ventilation system? Was it taken for lab samples? Was it discarded as rejected tablets? It didn't just disappear. And that brings us to the final active stage of production and our last module for this unit, packaging. We call this the final frontier because, well, once a product is sealed in its final container, the only way to check it again is to destroy the package. This is the last chance to catch an error before it leaves the building.
The absolute golden rule here, without a doubt, is line clearance. Before you start packaging a new product, that entire line has to be meticulously cleared of every single component from the last job. And I mean every single one. If an auditor finds just one stray tablet or a single patient leaflet left behind in a machine, it's a critical failure. End of story. Both the production team and the quality assurance team have to physically sign off that the line is clear before anything new is brought in. Modern packaging lines are incredibly fast, running hundreds of packs a minute. Way too fast for a human eye to check everything. So they rely on automated scanners that read barcodes to make sure the right leaflet goes in the right carton. The question is, how does an auditor verify that these automated systems are actually working?
They test it by trying to make it fail on purpose. The auditor will literally ask the operator to take a carton from a completely different product and put it on the line. Then everyone just watches. The system has to pass a very simple test. It must spot the wrong barcode, it must stop the machine, and it must reject that incorrect carton. You have to prove that your safety net actually works by actively challenging it.
So, as we wrap this up, let's just take a step back. We've seen how the auditor isn't just walking around with a clipboard. They're acting as a guardian, meticulously testing every single link in this very complex chain of quality.
We've seen it all. We confirm the materials were sourced correctly through those tough vendor audits. We saw them stored and weighed correctly in the warehouse. We watched the transformation into a dosage being done the right way during production. And finally, we verified it was all packaged correctly with all the right information at the end of the line. Each one of these check marks represents another critical point of control.
Because in the end, an audit is so much more than just a checklist. It is the last line of defense that stands between a patient and potential harm. And that really leaves us with one final thought. After seeing all of these potential things that could go wrong, which link in this chain do you think is the one that really keeps a pharmaceutical auditor awake at night?